I'm here with Kings legend and Kings radio broadcaster Daryl Evans. Daryl, if you were preparing to play a 48-game season and you'd been in 2 months of lockouts, how would you go about getting into game shape?
Well, I think from the standpoint where the players are at right now, I think throughout the lockout, you've got to keep yourself at a certain level of, of physical conditioning. There's probably going to be some ups and downs through the course of it. At times you're going to think you're getting close to making a deal. You might peak at that time. But I think your off-ice workouts are going to probably be pretty consistent, something that you maintain, and it's something that you're used to doing anyway throughout the regular season. I think finding when a deal does, come to fruition, you'll excel things a little bit more. I think the big thing is everybody's got the same playing field. Nobody's further ahead than anybody else. Each team will have certain guys that are playing in different leagues over in Europe. Some guys will be down in the minor leagues playing, just like the Kings have had some guys with their American Hockey League affiliate. So I think when you come in, it's just a matter of making sure that that you've taken care of yourself, and they've got a little bit of time now that they'll be able to work together. Once training camp does or the practices do come around, you got a chance to get a little bit of that timing in. But it's going to take a couple of weeks of playing those games, and the coaches with the respective teams get a chance to implement the systems and things like that. But I think the big thing is just your mental approach and how you've taken care of yourself, throughout the time that you've been away from the actual games.
Players have to get into game shape. Does the same thing go for coaches? Do coaches have to get into game shape?
I think it's the same for everybody. It probably goes for the fans as well. You all anticipate, but I think one thing you look at, it's something that we go through every summer anyway. This time maybe it's a little bit of an extended period of time, but you go back to, like I'll talk about, the Kings as a team or an organization. Here's a team that, a number of years they didn't make the playoffs. So the off seasons were 6 months, 7 months, at that time. Fortunately enough this year, they did something that they've never done before, and that's to win the Stanley Cup. You play all the way. An extended period of time off, sometimes maybe a little bit of a blessing in disguise. You get a chance to get yourself refocused mentally. I think the physical part of it, aside from the guys that maybe had some off-season surgeries and things like that, I think it's something that as a professional you learn to do, and you learn what your body, is capable of doing, how much rest it needs, and how to prepare yourself each year. So this is where you rely upon the guys taking that mature approach and getting themselves ready as individuals, and now as they come together as a team, then it becomes the coach's responsibility to bring them together as a team. I think the coaches go through the same things, and I know our coaching staff, as the others will do, they'll start watching game film, and they've probably been doing that throughout the entire lockout just to see in ways that they can improve their hockey club, and it'll be from watching regular season games, postseason games, and to see what works and what doesn't work. But I think when you look at as you prepare for a new season, every team other than maybe the Kings is different. There's different players on the rosters now, so you can't approach playing them the same way you did last year.
Daryl, when you were skating around for the Los Angeles Kings, who were the goalies that kept you up at night?
Let's see. There were some great goaltenders back then. I remember, and eventually I scored my first goal against him was Chico Resch, a goaltender that I'd watch. Grant Fuhr was an up-and-coming young goaltender at the time. He was fun to watch. But I remember he probably even a little bit more so, watching games just prior to that, guys like Ken Dryden and things like that. You just look at the level of some of these guys were, and then going back to even when I was a kid, the Johnny Bowers and Jacques Plants and Glenn Halls and things like that. It's an interesting position. I think as a player, when you get into it, you start, and it's even probably more evident now. You can actually study these guys with the amount of film and tape that you get to see on them, where that wasn't as much. When I first started playing, it wasn't as available. You get the reports on all these guys. You get guys that are scouting the goaltenders, but I think the goaltenders as a whole back then covered a lot less net. It was probably a little bit more of an acrobatic style of hockey, where the goaltenders now are bigger, the equipment's bigger, and they provide more of a presence. You don't see as much net. And I think one of the greatest quotes that I've heard was, it came out of Brett Hull when he's talking about, and here's a guy who scored 700 goals as a National Hockey League player, that, they're looking at, what do you see, on these goaltenders when they were talking about the equipment? He goes, I don't see much. So if he's not seeing much, you can imagine how little I saw as a player. Nowhere near the gift that he had to be able to put the puck in the net. So I relied a lot upon the power of my shot, in particular my slap shot, and the goaltenders, they're a special breed. They've always been it's always been a challenging position, but again, I think they were a little bit more acrobatic, back in our time.
Daryl, the Kings entered the 2012 playoffs as the 8th seed and ended up winning the Stanley Cup. What impressed you the most about that run?
Well, I think when you go in to a playoff run, regardless if you're the first seed or the 8th seed, it's a new season, and they always say it's a new season. You got to get to the dance floor, and that's what the Kings were able to do. I think if you look at what happened in the schedule just in the week leading up to the playoffs, Kings could have finished as high as the third seed. Had they won the games, the back-to-back games with San Jose closing out the season. Had they done that, we might not be sitting here talking today, calling the Kings the Stanley Cup champions. I think when you look at it, I think it was a little bit of a blessing in disguise. I think those step backwards got them focused. And then when you look at the opponents that the Kings had throughout the playoffs, and I'm not going to say that they couldn't have won the Cup going through other teams, but I think the opponents that were in their path were great selections for the Kings. I think when you look at Vancouver to start things off, winning that first game in their building was such an emotional boost and a confidence builder for them. And I think it was also probably a mental knock against Vancouver. All of a sudden they saw the Kings were for real and that the Kings were a better team that they played a couple of years ago in the playoffs. So I think it was the pressure was upon them. When you're the 8th seed and you're the visiting team on the road, the pressure's always on the home team, and I think that's one of the things the Kings took great advantage of, and that led true to be in all the series. Winning both games, first 2 games in each of the 4 opponents' buildings is has to say a lot. I think it speaks volumes, but this team was very focused. I think they came together nicely. Daryl Sutter came in, just brought a different outlook, a little bit more of an aggressive style. Terry Murray, I think you got to give him a lot of credit for what he established, giving him the structure that they had. I think he was a little bit more conservative style hockey than Daryl, but again, I think he's responsible for a lot of the foundation that was put within the hockey team and the way he developed some of these young players. Daryl, I think he was just a little bit more aggressive, and he put a lot of confidence in these guys. And I think after going through the coaching change, these players they felt that they were responsible for a coach losing his job, and I think that's why Daryl was able to get their attention that much more captivated. And once you get a little success going, then you get the trade. Carter comes aboard. You bring that natural goal scorer in. The addition of King and Nolan, those guys coming up. Voynov stepping in as being a regular after Jack Johnson, was moved. The complexion of the team was good. I think they finally got an identity at the end of the year. They were a big, hard team to play against, a team that cycled the puck down low, and that carried on throughout the playoffs. I think winning early in the playoffs, it snowballed from there. When you look at a team that wins 80% of its games, going 16-4 in the playoffs, it's a remarkable run, and you can't actually say that they were lucky. They earned in each and every one of those wins. They dominated when they were in the playoffs, and I think this team as a whole really came together nicely. The organization did, and I think it puts them in a good position. I think they built themselves a real solid foundation where they should compete for the next few years.
Daryl Evans, final question. You've been involved with hockey in the city of Los Angeles since the early 80s. You've been a great promoter of the sport in this city. Tough years. Sometimes this sport takes a back seat to basketball, baseball, and whatever else is going on in Los Angeles. Describe for me what it felt for you to experience that Stanley Cup championship that you've been trying so hard to get at this organization, and the fans got to the true fans finally got to experience it. What was that like for you?
Well, I don't think I could describe what it'd be like winning it as a player. I can only imagine, the emotion it would go through you going through those battles each and every night. But being, around the team as long as we've been, like you say, drafted by the Kings in 1980, so 32 years within the organization, in and out a couple of times, but traveling with the team on a day-to-day basis, working with the young guys as a skating consultant in the offseason, watching these young guys come up. You really do feel part of it. And I credit the organization for embracing us as broadcasters. I think we've got a unique situation with our broadcasters, how long all the guys have been around, and they are close to the team. But you look at it and. It really was something. Like the emotion. Again, you look at the city here. They've been spoiled. A lot of great teams in different sports. Hockey, basketball, baseball, even football back in the old day. And to see at that time when the postseason was here, the way the city actually embraced the hockey club. There was, you go to places and all of a sudden everybody's talking about the Kings, and that makes you very proud, to be part of it, and to watch the way that it happened. And I remember listening to Nick Nixon describe, the last couple of minutes there, and I had one earphone off my headset, listening to the crowd, the emotion that was in the building, and just listening to the emotion in Nick's voice. It was something that you never forget. I know it'll probably never feel the same as doing it as a player, but I can only imagine it felt unbelievable from my position. And again, very proud to say that I'm a member and have been a member of the Los Angeles Kings. And I know that I think I speak for a lot of our fans too. There are a lot of fans that have supported this team for a lot of years, and it was great to see them to be able to celebrate this in their lifetime.
Daryl Evans, thank you very much. It's great to have the NHL back.
Yes, it is my pleasure. We look forward to talking to you often again, and hopefully late in June again.
Excellent.